Howdy, folks. It is December 22nd, 2022, and we're going to try a little bit of a new format today. Some people might call it eclectic, some might call it, um, intentionally unguided. I'm going to call it flying by the seat of my pants because I didn't prepare anything. We're just going to talk. There's just so much stuff to talk about. I was like, I sat down and I was like, I'm going to do an itinerary for the call. And then I thought, there's so many things I want to talk about that once I get to talking, the itinerary goes out the window anyway. So why even bother? So we've had a lot of group activity over the past week or so. There's a lot of folks. There's a lot of stuff going on in our group behind the scenes. We have folks that I've found out have been listening to me for a couple years. And then all of a sudden I hear about it because I don't recognize the name of everybody in the group. And, somebody messaged me and they're like, just want to say hi. I've been listening to you for a couple years. I'm like, holy hell, who the hell voluntarily follows me around for a couple years listening? But I guess I've got a little bit of something to say, which is good. That's why I'm here. I ain't doing it for the pay because I ain't getting paid. I'm not doing it for the barter because I ain't getting much in the way of barter. But what I am doing is developing an amazing community. I mean, in our group, we have people from all walks of life. We have janitors, we have rocket scientists, we have doctors. Apparently, we have a few lawyers too, but that's okay. They're allowed to. They can come play with us. So today, what I want to focus on is kind of broad but specific at the same time. Folks ask me, they say, so, I'm going into court or I'm dealing with this issue or I'm dealing with that issue. What should I do? What should I say? And that's a very difficult question to answer. It's like sending somebody into a boxing ring and they say, okay, I'm going up against this fellow that's got the boxing gloves. He's about 6'3". He's the big shredded looking guy over there. What should I do? I'm like, well, it depends. What do I do if he throws a left hook? Well, you could duck it. You can back away from it. You can step inside. You can stand there and take it on the chin. All those are valid strategies. Now, when I was in the military, if you were going from lower enlisted to non-commissioned officer, that was E4 to E5. E5 is the beginning of the non-commissioned officer rank. And I know that some of you guys that are probably listening to this call might have been an officer in the military, but I'm talking to the guys that worked for a living. And so E4 to E5 used to go to what's called in the Army a primary leadership development course. PLDC course, the purpose of the PLDC course is one purpose and one purpose only. It is to get you to take leadership and do something. Okay. So what they might do is take you out to a spot and, they'll tell you, okay, you've got a cliff on this side. You got a river on this side. There's an enemy encampment over here, and there's tanks coming from this direction. You're in charge of these 12 guys. Go. And the worst thing that you can do is not make a decision. That's the worst thing you can do. As a matter of fact, that's the only thing you can do that'll get you really in trouble is just not make a decision. If you take your men and lead them over a cliff or straight into enemy fire, at least you made a decision. You did something. And that's what they want you to do, make a decision. I remember one time years ago, my father was born in 1926, and I'm only 48. So I'm getting close to the age that he was when he had me, actually. He started popping out more kids at the age of 48, 50, and another one at 55. It just kept going. And so, motivated fellow. But he lived through the Depression, and I was very fortunate. I was unfortunate that I didn't get him for a long time, but I was very fortunate that he lived through a lot of life. So I got what they call red pill information at a very young age. And so we were doing something, and I was supposed to do something while he was picking up something really, really heavy, big beam or something. And whatever happened, I know I hesitated. Like I froze. For some reason, I just froze. I don't know. I had two conflicting instructions in my brain or something, and I froze. And I was only about 8 or 9 years old, but I was with my father from the time I was 4 when I could walk all the way through till he died. And so he was standing there holding this massive thing, this big beam or whatnot. And he says, good God, son, do something, even if it's wrong. And I remembered that all my life. There's many times that I've just do something, even if it's wrong. And so people will call me and they'll be like, okay, what should I do? I'm like, well, you could do this, you could do this, that you could do this. And they're like, Okay, well, what if I do this and it doesn't work? Well, do something else. I mean, a lot of this stuff is just trying out new stuff, right? Now, there are serious consequences to life. Yes. But there's even more serious consequences to not doing anything at all. The worst thing you can do is not do anything. Now, that doesn't mean that inactivity can't be a plan. Okay. I mean, I used to read Louis Lamar Westerns, and folks talked about how patient the Indians were. If you were pinned down by Indians, first one to move died. I read a story once about a guy that laid out in the desert for like, 6 days. First person that moved was one that was going to die. It's okay not to do anything if that is what you're intending to do. Nothing can be a plan, just as long as it's a active, proactive plan. You got to have it in. I'm not going to do anything. So a lot of what we do in commerce, unfortunately, is you prepare, but a lot of it is reactive. So let's say that you're going to drive around, and the Supreme Court's ruled that you do not have to have a license to, and I know people differentiate between driving and traveling. I really don't care. I'll call it whatever the heck I want. I'm 48 years old. I'm grown. I'm competent. I have two legs under me, two hands. If I want to call it driving, I'm going to call it driving. People say, well, words are important. Yes, they're important. I can call it whatever I want to. I can call it flying if I want to. I'm using my definition. So yeah, driving around, and you don't have public tags on your vehicle. People say, well, that's illegal. Well, it is illegal if you're required to have public tags on your vehicle. Who's required to have public tags on their vehicle? U.S. citizens. And that may even be arguable. However, you will not find anything in any code or statute that says that you don't have to have public tags on a automobile or a car, truck, or wagon, or whatever you want to call it. So I've had people say, well, find me a law that says I can do this. That's not the way law works. Law does not tell you what you can do. Okay. If we could only do what the law said we could do, that would be a very, very bad scenario to live in. Okay. Law is only about what you can't do. Everything about government is moderation. Government, they're going to take control. That's what government means. On old car engines, there used to be a governor. The governor would control, like if you were going down a hill, it would keep you from picking up too much speed because it would govern the engine. Okay, that's exactly what government does today. They keep us from gathering up too much speed, right? Oh, you want to build a house? You want to start a business? Whoa, buddy, you can't just jump in there and do that. You got to go do all this other stuff. Now, I am by no means anti-government. I worked for the government for a good part of my life. I am pro-government, actually. What I am anti is anti-government up my butt, right? As long as I'm not damaging anybody, I would just presume be left alone. Okay. And that was my original purpose for even studying all this stuff. Just want to be left alone. Unfortunately, in this fallen world, we're not going to be left alone, and that's okay, but it's part of the struggle. Now, when it comes to traveling, driving, moving about, buckboard, wagon, truck, train, whatever you're out there on the roadway with, if you're going to do it and you're going to try to stay under the radar, we'll say, is it okay to drive with a license and public tags? Absolutely. It's expensive, okay? But life is expensive, and if you actually cause someone else damage, that's expensive too, because I think if you damage someone, you should be liable for it. As a matter of fact, the difference between being in the public jurisdiction, which is the democracy, and the private jurisdiction, which is the republic — we actually have two forms of government side by side in this country — is in the public, you have limited liability. You have very limited liability in the public. What is limited liability? Well, if you work for me and you're driving around in my company pickup truck, you don't have to pay for the gas nor the insurance. Okay. But I do get a say in how fast you can drive or whether you can be drunk or not. And I'm not even thinking about the government's rules, just my rules and the contract between me and you as my employee. Okay. So if I'm working for you, you can put a rule in that says that anytime I'm driving the company truck, I have to have on brown pants. Okay. It's perfectly lawful, perfectly legal. All right. But your liability is limited. If you run into someone and there's an accident, Does your own private insurance have to cover it? No. First and foremost is going to be the company's insurance because you have limited liability. Now, that sounds great. Limited liability sounds wonderful until you realize that when your liability is limited, it's only limited because someone else is assuming liability for you. And if someone is assuming liability for you, they get to have control over you. Okay. So that means that if you don't want to have someone controlling you, then you operate with unlimited liability. That means you are 100% responsible for your own actions. Okay. And when you start stepping outside of the public and into the private, you need to understand that it's not about escaping liability. It's about assuming more. It's about assuming more responsibility. It's about assuming more competency. You are more responsible for any negative reactions or actions that come from any negative consequences that come from your actions. So, are you ready to assume more liability? And if you're not, you need to go get your license, your registration, your proof of insurance. You need to make sure your turn signals work, your lights work. Well, you need to do that stuff anyway. But you need to make sure that you're doing something. If you're going to allow the government to have liability for you, then you need to be square and go get the license and the registration and proof of insurance. Okay. Now, unfortunately, and I just recently had a talk with a young lady. The young lady's leaving home for the first time. And it's very shocking. She's she's an adult now. She's out doing her thing. And one of the things I think we all find out in life is that life is a little bit harder than what we initially figured, because when you're 14, 13, 12, you think, oh, life is so easy, right? And that's a great age because, frankly, we know everything then. After that, once we start going out in the world, we just get dumber and dumber and dumber, right? So I'm talking to this young lady, and she's like, I don't know what the point is. She said, I just had somebody come to me with this problem, and I said this, and I don't know if I did the right thing, and so on and so forth. And I told her, I said, I probably should have warned you. I failed you here. I said, you are a very competent young lady. You're intelligent. You're mature. I mean, this is a 45-year-old lady in a young girl's body. She really is. I mean, she's extremely competent. She's very, very energetic. She's very intelligent. And as a result of that, I told her, I said, you're going to find that you're going to attract people to you who are in need, who need leadership. Okay. People can realize, they can look and they can see when somebody has leadership skills. They get attracted to those folks. And so when you're willing to assume more liability, what you'll find is that more responsibility comes your way. Okay. So I got in some legal stuff as a result of a ex-spouse back in the day, 2012, 13, 14 era. And I learned a lot. It was really one of the better things that ever happened to me. It was rough, but it was a very good thing because I had a massive learning curve. I learned more than I would have at any 4-year college, or especially law school, because they don't teach you anything really. And so, I haven't been to law school, but I've talked to quite a few attorneys. And, it's just like if you're going to litigate a dog bite incident. So if somebody's dog bites you, there's only like one statute that covers dog bites. You don't have to study international law in order to understand how to press a claim and perfect a private claim in the public for somebody's dog biting you. It's not that difficult. Okay. You just got to know how to write motions. You got to know how to do court procedure. Okay. So I'm talking to this young lady, and she's like, man, it's just difficult because I think she's attracting more responsibility. And I'm like, I wish I could tell you it's going to stop, but it's not. Once I got through my legal stuff, I decided that I was going to just blend in. Okay. I was going to keep my head below the parapet, and I was not going to step out there. I was not going to do anything that drew attention to me because, quite frankly, who gets killed first when an invading army attacks? Leaders, right? Yeah, you got the cannon fodder at the front, right? But really and truly, who's the people who are going to be drawing the most fire? In Vietnam, you weren't, and I know in a lot of battle zones, you're not allowed to salute an officer. Why? What's the surest way to get a sniper to pick them off? They want to pick off the leadership, right? Take off the head, the body doesn't know what to do. So if you're going to assume leadership, if you're going to assume extra responsibility, and I know I'm meandering a little bit here, but there's a point. If you're going to assume leadership, you're going to assume extra responsibility, then you're going to find people attracted to you who need that leadership. So 2020 rolls around, and all of a sudden I'm watching people around me, people I know, who are keeping their head below the parapet's not working. So the social contract, that's a loaded phrase. The social contract before was if you are born, you got to be born first, right? Because that's where it starts. And you're in this world, you're in this commercial world. You go through childhood. All of a sudden at age 18, you're suddenly considered an adult. They're trying to mitigate that and push that off, but you are. And then you go get a job. Now, back in the 60s, you could go get a job after 8th grade or, after high school, and you were guaranteed to be able to support a wife, a child, and you were going to be able to have a house, going to be able to have one vehicle, maybe two, and you were going to have the standard American dream. Just sad, right? And that worked for a little while. And then all of a sudden you had to have two people in order to work. 70s, 60s were chaotic, lots of social change at that time. 70s, things started going downhill. But actually, our standard of living and our quality of life went all the way up until and this is just my opinion, 1989. In 1989, we crested out. And I think every year after that was a decline. And we're currently in a decline. The United States is in a decline. Okay. There's a guy named Aaron Clarey, great guy, Captain Capitalism. He's written a book several years ago. It's called Living with the Death of the American Empire, How to Enjoy the Decline. And it's a book about, and it lays it out in the first part, very depressing, about how to enjoy the decline. You can still do well, even in a decline. There were people who got rich in the Depression. You can do it. You just got to place yourself in the right place. So 1989, we start going downhill. Okay. And all of a sudden, you can go get that job. You can even go get that degree. We were promised for years, you get that degree, you're going to get a good paying job. Now, a 4-year degree doesn't mean shit. It just doesn't. It doesn't mean shit. If you're going to go do a specific thing, yes, it can help you out. But I was one of the first ones to call it. I was actually doing public speaking as far back as the year 2000, 1999. I was in a college class at a university in Kentucky, and one of the kids raised their hand and they said, and at that time I had not conferred a degree. I had no degree conferred to my name. And the reason I was in there speaking is it was a class on information security and law regarding information security. It's a law class. And I knew the professor, and it was impromptu. I was talking to him in his office. Hey, come to talk to my class. So we're talking about the job I was doing, which was his investigative work. And somebody said, hey, what's your degree in? And I had to say, well, I don't have a degree. And at that time, I gave a prediction. I said, and my friend who was a teacher about craft, I said, you can be successful without a degree. You don't have to have a degree to be successful. It becomes easier if you have a degree. But I said, but I suspect that in the next decade or so, that having a degree will actually probably be more of a liability. Well, we've hit that point. Having a college degree can definitely be a liability. The most effective, energetic, best years of your life are between the ages of about 14, 15, 16, all the way up to about 30, 32. Okay. It varies depending upon the individual and the sex. However, I can't keep up with an 18, 19, 20-year-old, 22-year-old. I just can't. Now I'm a little wiser than they are. Okay. And that's good. I can get to the goal a little bit quicker in many cases, but when it comes right down to being able to pull all-nighters and work my butt off, ain't no way I can keep up with somebody who's in good shape at age 22, 23. Okay. What should you be doing at those years? I would offer that unless you're getting a degree for a very specific reason, then you're wasting your time. You should probably just go ahead, start a business, because those are the years where you can try and fail and try and fail and try and fail, get all those failures out of the way and start yourself a business. learn contract law, learn this commercial system, learn how to file a motion, learn how to protect yourself, learn how to limit your liability as a private person, learn how to do what you need to do in this world of commerce, right? So I predicted it. We're at a point where the college degree can actually be more of a liability. So you go to college, and by the time you get out of college, you've wasted 4, maybe 5 years that you could have definitely, even if you just went and got a blue collar job, learned how to weld or did a craft or a trade, you could be making a fortune. And so now we're at a point, and this rounds it back around. Everybody wants to stay below the parapet. Pay your taxes, you'll be okay. Don't do anything to get in trouble, you'll be okay. Get your degree, you'll be okay. Graduate high school, get your degree, you'll be okay. Okay. Those things are being stripped away from us, slowly being stripped away from us. Okay. There's no reestablishing it. It's just the way the world's going. Okay. Don't fight it, recognize it, and go with it. You can't keep your head below the parapet if the parapet is being lowered so low that you can't keep your head below it. Period. All right. So in 2020, that was the landmark year that people who were trying to keep their head below the parapet, who were trying not to be a target, became a target. Not because they didn't do what they weren't supposed to do, but because they weren't going and doing what they were told they needed to do in order to continue to get the paycheck. If you don't go get the, now this talk may go up on YouTube, so I might just replace some words because we all know that they censor stuff, right? We'll call it the magic dart. If you don't go get the magic dart, you are going to be fired, right? All of a sudden, for years, I was studying contract stuff. I was studying law. Nobody cared. All of a sudden, I was filling up entire rooms of people who wanted to know how they were going to be able to keep their job. It's the first year, 2020 was the first year that just by keeping your head down, you could continue to live a successful life and not be hassled. All of a sudden, folks are like, if I don't wear this mask, I get in trouble. If I don't go get this magic dart, I get in trouble. How can I protect myself? How can I continue to put food on my family's table? How can I continue to make sure there's a roof over the table if I don't have an income? Okay. And there are ways to do that. But at the end of the day, here's the problem. If you have a contract with an employer, whether they are right, whether they are wrong, if they say the words "you are fired," then you are without income. Now, if you know what you're doing, even that can be salvaged, maybe, possibly. I've helped folks do it. I had a fellow one time who he made over $250,000 a year. He got fired. And when he got fired, he went back to his office and he said, he called me and we sat there, we wrote him a conditional acceptance for the firing. And he said, so what can we do? And I said, well, um, let's just write this document out. I got somebody who's called me repeatedly and I apologize. I'm just going to say I'm on a call. Ask if it's 911, because if it's 911, that's a problem. And so we wrote a conditional acceptance. He walked past the room where his boss and the HR woman were in. He walked in, he laid this letter down, and he said, you know what? He said, tomorrow's Friday. I'm going to take off tomorrow and give you all plenty of time to answer this letter. And so he left, and by Monday they were calling him saying that they had made a mistake. They'd be more than happy to just forget the whole thing and he could come back into work. Can you, because remember, everything's an offer. Everything's an offer. From you're fired to I need to see your license and registration to I'm going to punch you in the nose. It's all an offer. And one of the first things that happened to me in 2010, 2011, when I first started studying this stuff, is understanding that everything is about contract. Everything's an offer, and there's only 4 ways to respond to an offer. You can be silent or you can argue. Those two things are dishonorable. The Supreme Court's ruled over and over and over that if you are silent on a matter in which you have an obligation to respond, then you are at fault. Fault has a very definitive legal definition in that case. You can also do an unconditional acceptance. That would be me saying, hey, you owe me $100 and you hand me $100. That's an unconditional acceptance. Or you can do a conditional acceptance where you say, hey, I'd be more than happy to pay you $100 upon proof of your claim that I owe you $100. That would be a conditional acceptance. Okay. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You can just say, I'd be glad to pay you $100. Just show me proof you owe it, that I owe it, that there's a contract between us, that I've done you damage. So I started learning this stuff. And as I started learning this stuff, I started having successes. And the people that I helped started having successes. And that's where you really measure what you're doing is worthwhile. Is it working? Because if it's not working, do something else. And that's why in the group, I often tell folks, I'm very results oriented. If I try to do something just because I fail doesn't mean I'm not going to try it again. But if I use one particular technique 30 times and every time it fails, I'm probably going to move on to something else. That's not giving up. That's just changing your tactics to fit reality. So we're in a stage of the game in the decline of the United States empire where you can't just blend in by keeping your head below the parapet, which is why I think people actually want to interact with me, join our group. I think we're getting close to 2,000 members now, and learn how to react in a commercial situation, such as the IRS saying you owe them money, a bill collector saying you owe them money, somebody knocking on your door and saying, I'm with the government and I'm here to help you by causing you a whole bunch of trouble, etc., so on and so forth. And really and truly, that's the whole purpose of this life, is to understand who you are and try to be of service to the people that are around you. And so I hope in all of this meandering that it kind of shows the cohesiveness of the whole thread. There's a common thread running through here. Okay. We started out talking about liability, right? And how if you're going to step outside of what is normal and accepted, then you're going to run into some challenges. But we also talked about the fact that as we continue down this decline, down this slope that is what it is, that you're not able to keep your head below the parapet anymore. You just can't. You can be sitting at home on your laurels, minding your business, and the world can intrude. It's always been that way, but it's more noticeable than ever now. Okay, you go get a job. I recently tried to make a doctor's appointment. Let's go with that one. I tried to make a doctor's appointment. Okay, and in the doctor's appointment, I said, hey, I said, I have an actual objection covering up my face just because somebody says I have to. I have a real problem with that. Very important matter to me. Okay? And if it's something that's necessary, I'll do it. If I were in an operating room and the doctor said, hey, come here, help me out, hold this guy's artery because I have to go pee, would I put on a mask? Oh, yeah, I'm standing over an open abdomen. Absolutely. But to walk into a doctor's office and have my blood pressure checked, am I going to put on a mask? No, absolutely not. That's where I've drawn my line. You can draw your line at a different point. I'm not doing it. I'll take a bullet in the head behind the paint shed before I do. And so anymore, you can be excluded for commerce because you won't take a knee. That's a very dangerous situation to be in. And the only way to press back against it is through knowledge. Scripture tells us that my people perish for lack of knowledge. And that's what this group is about. It's about knowledge. It's not about overthrowing the government, because I don't want to overthrow the government. First off, that results in massive death, starvation, pain, and suffering. Second off, somebody's going to have to replace the government that we have. And quite frankly, I don't think you can replace it with anything better than what we already have. The government is not the problem. The fallen nature of man is the problem. The fact that we don't know how to interact in commerce and we've been allowed to be trained up to be debtors and slaves is the problem. Knowledge is the solution. And that's what we're doing in this group. We're working towards knowledge. It doesn't mean that everything we advocate is going to work. It doesn't mean that everything that doesn't work is not going to work next time. You have to use your own judgment. You have to use your own, what the Bible calls discernment. And you have to understand that just keeping your head under the parapet may not be possible anymore. Can you still continue to do that? Depending on your station in life, yes, you can. Is it guaranteed? No, nothing is really guaranteed in this particular realm of commerce. So with that said, if anybody, we're at 8:42, we might make this a short call today. If anybody has any questions, we'll hit questions. But other than that, that's about all I've got to say today. That's just some stuff that's been brewing in my head over the past few days. And I wanted to get that out there because as people watch these videos, it's like a cumulative building of knowledge, and it's not a one-way street. When I put out a video, people respond and they tell me what they want. They tell me what works for them. They contact me. They say, this is what I want to hear about next time, or this is the problem I'm having now. So this is a completely and totally interactive environment. Even if it's me putting out a video and nobody else ever speaks, it's still interactive. And that's the beauty of what we have with the internet. It is a tool that can be used for good or it can be used for bad. And right now, what we're trying to do is use it for good and develop our knowledge base, develop resources, and develop community. So anybody have any questions? Cool. I think I may have scared a lot of people off lately with the whole, I put a post up and I said, can your membership in the group be used against you? And I said, yes, it can. Okay. Fact of the matter is anything can be used against you. Somebody can try to show that you're guilty of a crime by the fact you're wearing a brown t-shirt. That anything can be used against you. This is, we've had more than one episode recently where when you start going to court, especially if you're involved in a civil matter or a family matter, or in one case a criminal matter, there's always that whole thing of where they want to try to disparage your reputation. And one of the things they can do is they can say, are you a sovereign citizen? That's one of the questions I've been asked. Sovereign means an utmost authority unto oneself, which is silly because nobody is the utmost authority unto oneself. Citizen is someone who has abrogated their authority to a government. So the word sovereign citizen is completely meaningless. It's like dry water or military intelligence, right? So I may have scared some folks off when I said that, because I actually know of at least 3 cases where participation in our group has actually been brought up in a public setting. However, that's okay. That shows we're over target. I've often said that the Facebook group that we have is not a normal group. It's not. We are really doing things that matter. I've helped folks save their jobs, their homes. I've helped folks take care of matters that they would not otherwise have been able to take care of. Now, that doesn't mean I'm always right, and I'm just a man, and I've made more mistakes than I have successes, but in a collective environment, it is very easy to pick a whole lot of brains and speed up the rapidity with which you learn. And that's what we're doing here. So with that said, if nobody has any questions, I appreciate you all attending. I'll get this posted pretty soon, and we will meet again soon. But I think I'm going to be posting some additional videos over the next few days because we're getting ready to get slammed with all kinds of ice and cold. Apparently, we're getting ready to turn into the Arctic here in Kentucky. And so I hope everybody stays warm and safe and dry. And I hope your electric stays on. And if it doesn't, I hope you have plenty of wood or kerosene. So you all have a wonderful night. Thank you for joining.